Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Rob Marsiglio, back with another video this week. It is Friday the 13th as I record this. We're just over 1 week out from our third consecutive Bank of Canada rate cut. The GTA real estate market is not ripping though, and I want to dive into that in today's video. I want to start with this nice summary that Daniel Foch put out on Twitter. Many buyers are waiting for more rate cuts. Many sellers can't afford to wait for more cuts. And this is why the housing market isn't ripping. The tweet is great and really summarizes what I want to cover in this video, that the buyers are still waiting, that sellers can't really afford to wait, that the market isn't ripping. We're going to look at some price data from over the summertime to see how the market has moved, and then what could potentially be a catalyst to get the market moving again. If it's rate specific, we could be looking at some substantial rate cuts, allegedly, by the end of this year. All that in today's video. We're going to start with what is going on with new listings. This kind of signals that sellers are really the ones that cannot afford to wait in this market right now. I've shared this chart before on this channel. The black and red dotted lines are what I want you to focus on for the kind of median or average year in the GTA and how things do kind of trend. Orange is how we trended through August to this point. But you can see that in September, we would expect a significant uptick in the number of new listings hitting the market relative to August. And this is really as close as of a live snapshot as I can give you as to what is happening with new listings. This is a daily plotting, so every single day there's a point on this chart that shows you how many new listings were entered across the GTA to the Toronto MLS. The numbers, the callouts that I put on this chart, 1147, this is June 6th, the day after the first rate cut. Then we go to July 25th where we saw 810 new listings entered. That was the day after the second rate cut. And the third rate cut, this is reported on September 5th, this number, one day after the third rate cut, where we saw almost 1,200 new listings entered into the system on that day. That there highlights and pinpoints the one day after the market, and you can see that there was, at least at the first and the third rate cuts, some increased new listing activity. Over the summer, that July rate cut, we really didn't see any movement. It was barely a drop in the water, like one of those fantastic Olympic divers, barely a splash, But let's smooth that out. Let's look at the freehold data versus the condo data to see how the market is responding now versus, the prior peak for new listing activity in 2024. And that is this chart here. So again, black line is freehold and red line is the condo market. And this is our 7-day moving average. So really, if you took this 449, which happened near the end of June, this was the kind of highest pace over a 1 week stretch that we saw for new listings in the Greater Toronto area. So you'd multiply that number by 7 and it kind of tells you how many listings we saw in that 7-day stretch. You can see that after this most recent rate cut in September, that we hit a new high. The kind of most active listing stretch, 7-day listing period that we saw was really that stretch from September 4th to September 10th. So that's 461 new listings per day on the freehold side. And on the condo side, the timelines are very similar. It happened a day earlier, but 306 new listings entered per day on the condo side, really following this most recent rate cut announcement. But again, based on this chart, it's really hard to attribute that to the rate cut itself or to seasonality. What I can say is that at least to start the month off, we've gotten off to a hotter start than what we saw in June, obviously. Do things taper off, though? Do we end up hitting or having more new listings entered into the MLS system this September than June or even May of this year when really new listings peaked? That's to be seen. Let's keep our eyes on this rate of new listings and new listings totals as the weeks go on. We'll have a much better idea, I'd say, in a week or so's time as to where we're going to end up for in September. So that kind of covers off the second point in Daniel Foch's tweet, saying that it's the sellers that can't wait to get to market. They're seeing these rate cuts. Many of them are in a position where they need to sell, so they're flooding the market at this point in time, really trying to test it, hoping that the buyers are out there to meet them. And again, spoiler alert, first line in Daniel's tweet was that buyers are still waiting for more rate cuts. I'm going to show you that data right now as well. Again, for some context, here is what a traditional year looks like. You can see that sales in September, according to this kind of median and average lines, they don't really move too much from August. Really, the market bottoms out in August. It's our slowest sales month of the year, not named November, December, or January. February is also a little bit slower, but not this year. Anyways, we don't expect too much of a bump in September, so I'm not going to read too much into suppressed buyer activity. It's really leading up to that Thanksgiving weekend in October where you'll see things peak in the fall normally, so we're going to have to wait to see what happens there. But again, how have sales numbers reacted to this most recent rate cut? Same thing as before. I've broken it down by the freehold and the condo markets. And you can see what the pattern looks like, at least going back to the May long weekend. You have a suppressed stretch where obviously sales are down because you're losing out on really a whole week of sales leading up to or following a long weekend. People really slow the listings down leading into the long weekend. That means that the week after sales are down and then they pick back up. But the pattern has been, suppressed week of activity, a spike followed by a bit of a tapering off is what we see into the end of the month. Another spike at the start of the month, tapering off. Another long weekend hits, big dip in data. This is going back to the Canada Day long weekend. Then we saw that spike in activity relative, not back up to previous highs, but then a tapering off, nice steadying out through July, big drop into the August long weekend, spike, tapering off, drop into the September Labor Day long weekend. And now we've seen this spike. The question is, does this spike kind of surpass the numbers that we saw in August? Is this going to be a sustained level? Will it be similar to what we saw in July where it was a quick peak and a fall off? We really don't know what sales are going to do until we get through the month and kind of track these numbers more. It's a similar pattern on the condo side, these red numbers here, although we've kind of started to see maybe this 7-day moving average roll over just a little bit more. Now, if you've tuned into this channel before, what I'm about to say is something you've heard before. New listings are up, the rate of new listings are up, but the rate of sales are down or flat, and that is going to lead to a climbing active inventory. And here's what I'm talking about. We're not quite back up to the 25,055 level that we saw back in July prior to falling off through August, but earlier this week when I released my Monday months of inventory, we are just at around 23,600 active listings right across the GTA. In the few days since, so this is as of September 13th in the morning, Friday the 13th, we're at 24,924 active listings. It would not surprise me at all to see this number eclipse 25,000 by the end of today again. This is one more chart that I share every single Monday over on X, breaking down active housing inventory by kind of market segment. I divide Toronto into condos in the freehold market. Then I look at Durham, York, Peel, and Halton. And what we are seeing is that York region, this blue line, and then Durham and Halton regions have both hit new year-to-date highs for active inventory. The Toronto freehold market is getting super close to the highs that it's. I think this is the second highest number that we've seen. It's really the Toronto condo market, which is still really lagging the peak that we saw back in July, that is kind of keeping that total GTA number down. So, if condo inventory gets back up even to the levels that we had seen prior, we'd be talking already more than what we're sitting at right now, over that 25,000 mark, probably getting up closer to 25,500 active listings. We're going to have to see how that will play out. But, you can see it's the freehold market and the 905 that are really already driving the charge in this active listings building up early in September. Buyers are waiting and sellers cannot afford to wait, and the market is not ripping yet. And the way that I want to highlight the market not ripping yet is to kind of update you as to what prices did over the summertime, comparing the June average and median prices to what we saw in August. And I won't go through each and every row here. You can pause the video here and on the next slide that I'm going to show, but this is showing you the average prices in June compared to August. And you can see that in Halton region, we are down about 2.8% over the summer according to average prices. And the biggest drop that we saw was in just Toronto straight up. This is condo and freehold combined. That was down about 12.3%. Median, very similar, down 12.5% was the biggest drop that we saw in Toronto, and Halton region was down 2.7%. Again, I do think it's important to bring context to these numbers. When we look at TREB as a whole, pulling from Market Watch data, you can see that this orange line, with the exception of the big change in month-over-month price drops that we saw in January, we're not used to seeing prices really drop from December to January, but the rest of the year, in terms of month-over-month price change, has kind of just played steady with what we'd be used to seeing. So price drops in June are not, an unrealistic thing. Prices do usually peak in May of any given year. Price drops in July, like we saw, were not out of the ordinary, and price drops in August were not out of the ordinary. And it would not be out of the ordinary to see price climbs or price hikes or an increase in the average sale price come September and October before maybe falling off in November and December again. I think a better way to look at what the market is doing is by looking at a benchmark price or the composite benchmark. Here's the definition. It aggregates different types of homes, so your detached semis, towns, and condos, and applies weights based on the proportion of these homes sold in the market. Kind of reflects the overall market price trends rather than being dominated by one specific home type. So we don't want the mix of sales really influencing what is happening with the average and median prices, and the kind of composite benchmark price wipes that out. So how do prices over the summer look using this metric? And you can see it's a little bit more modest. The broad market in total was down about 2.56% over the summer. Halton saw the smallest drop at 1.79% according to the composite benchmark price, and Durham region was down almost 3% from June's number to August's number. Now hop on over to X at some point. I will be releasing an update on kind of the weekly median sale price. It's not as good as the composite benchmark, but that one is something I cannot calculate on a weekly basis. We'll keep our eyes on what that does in September. Do we start to see that kind of jump a little bit as we'd be used to seeing in a September market, or will it not? One catalyst that buyers may be waiting for is not going to happen until December. So maybe we don't see price jumps or any price movement in a positive direction is the wrong word, but an upward direction until this happens. And this is what CIBC is calling for, which is saying jumbo rate cuts by December. This is from an article on BNN Bloomberg, and one of the country's biggest lenders say the Bank of Canada will accelerate the pace of monetary easing in order to stave off recession. CIBC says policymakers led by Governor Tiff Macklem will reduce the policy rate by 50 basis points at each meeting in December and January, according to new forecast released Thursday. The lender expects the central bank to end the easing cycle next June with a policy rate of 2.25%. Now, this kind of lines up with what National Bank is predicting, but I do have to say that the other four big banks, being BMO, TD, RBC, and Scotiabank, are predicting not quite as rapid of an easing as CIBC is saying here. They're kind of the most seeing the most aggressive path forward for rate cuts and monetary easing. So I want to know what you think in the comments. How fast do rates come down from here going forward? Maybe where do rates end up at the end of this easing cycle? And will buyers be lured back into the market? Will affordability improve enough where they can maybe afford a price that sellers are willing to sell their home for? Or, will we just see more and more holdout and a grind down for, longer than into next June? Now, I know it's been a while since I've uploaded a video. I appreciate you sticking through to the end of this one. I promise going forward to do this a little bit more regularly. Summer takes over when you've got two little ones and doing all those activities. So it was very busy on my end, but I'm looking forward to bringing you these weekly updates. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, like this video so you don't miss anything else going forward. Share it with a friend that you think may find this information useful. Like I said, I enjoy doing these deep dives into the stats, into the numbers, seeing what trends are doing to kind of inform you as the consumer, help you make the best decision for yourself as to when the time is to get into the market, get out of the market, just watch the market for fun, whatever you are getting out of this video. Thanks so much for sticking with me right through to the end of this one. Until we speak again next time, please stay safe and cheers.